On our broadcast tonight, Japan strikes back a day after a South Korean foreign minister urged Tokyo to face up to history at the UN meeting in Geneva. Japan is taking the podium to explain where it stands on the comfort women issue. Seoul's defense ministry unveils plans to cut its military capacity by 100,000 troops by year 2022 and change its recruitment system. Plus, the government is set to ease regulations to boost corporation takeovers and encourage more investment in venture startups. With these stories and more next on ARIRANG News at 8. Good evening to our viewers in Korea, and hello to those of you who are watching from around the world. It's Thursday, March 6th here in Seoul. I am Yoshihide. We begin this evening at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, where we're expecting Japan to defend its stance on the sexual enslavement of women during wartime. At a press briefing this morning, Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said he will explain Tokyo's position on the matter at the UN session, while expressing regret over Korean Foreign Minister Byung-se's keynote speech one day earlier. On Wednesday, Yoon, being the first top Korean diplomat to raise the issue on the UN stage, called on Tokyo for an official apology for the atrocities. Suga added that previous Japanese prime ministers and the current one have continually expressed their remorse towards sex slave issues. Now, meanwhile, over in the U.S. state of Virginia, another huge step was made in the push to use two names to identify the body of water between Korea and Japan in school textbooks. The bill mandating the use of EC and Sea of Japan has passed. Park Ji-won tells us more.
The so-called East Sea Bill has passed the Virginia House of Delegates, the last phase of the legislative process, in an 82-16 vote. The bill requires all textbooks approved by the Board of Education to note that the Sea of Japan is also referred to as the Korean name East Sea. As the bill passed the state Senate in January, it now only requires the governor's signature for it to become law. Governor Terry McAuliffe is expected to sign the bill by early April at the latest, and the bill will take effect from July 1st. The passing of the bill is a major victory for the state's estimated 82,000 Korean American residents. They had to overcome intense lobbying by the Japanese government, in which Tokyo warned it might reconsider Japanese investment in the state. The Korean American community in Virginia has been pushing hard for the change since the early 1990s. They, as well as all Koreans, view the Sea of Japan designation as an unpleasant reminder of Japan's brutal colonization of the Korean peninsula in the early to mid-20th century. The Korean American community aims to further introduce the dual naming bill in U.S. states with high Korean American populations like California, New York, and New Jersey. They ultimately hope to change the U.S. government's single name policy regarding sea names. The International Hydrographic Organization, or IHO, published a book designating official names of the seas in 1929. Japan registered the name Sea of Japan to refer to the body of water that separates Korea and Japan. However, as Korea was colonized by Japan back then, it had no way to voice its opposition on the world stage. The Korean government has been calling for the IHO to change the current single name of the sea to at least the dual naming, as the term East Sea has been used in Korea for thousands of years. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Well, North Korea said no to South Korea's proposal to hold working-level talks on staging additional reunions of families separated since the Korean War. But experts say the communist regime didn't completely shut the door on Seoul's offer. Hwang Sung-hee reports.
North Korea on Thursday rejected South Korea's proposal for talks on resuming reunions for families separated by the Korean War. The response comes one day after Seoul offered to meet for Red Cross working-level talks next Wednesday at the Truce village of Panmunjom. In a statement, the North said a proper atmosphere had not been created to discuss the reunion issue. South Korea's Unification Ministry expressed its regrets and called on the North to reconsider.
The issue of separated families is a task to be resolved between the two Koreas before anything else without being tied to any other issues.
But the North did not completely slam the door on the South. It said important humanitarian issues like making the reunions a regular event should not be dealt with by Red Cross officials. Experts say Pyongyang may want to meet for high-level talks to discuss a number of matters, like resuming South Korean tours to North Korea's Mount Kumgang resort. The two Koreas held their first reunion event for war-separated families in more than 3 years last month, in a move largely seen as the first step towards improving inter-Korean ties. But since then, tensions have soared following Pyongyang's string of short-range missile launches in protest against Seoul and Washington's ongoing annual joint military drills. The Unification Ministry said it's currently reviewing what steps to take next. But some experts don't expect the North to agree to talks until Seoul and Washington wrap up their joint military drills in April. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
President Park Geun-hye has urged North Korea to end its nuclear weapons program so the two Koreas can revive economic cooperation projects and move toward peace and a reunification of the Korean peninsula. At a commissioning ceremony for graduating military cadets on Thursday, the South Korean president said the North needs to realize it cannot develop its nuclear capabilities and economy at the same time. President Park then said if Pyongyang takes sincere steps to denuclearize, Seoul and the international community could work toward helping North Korea develop. The president, on the other hand, did say that the South Korean military should be ready at all times for any form of provocation from the North. If everything goes according to plan, Korea will have a leaner fighting force by the year 2022. The Defense Ministry proposed to cut 110,000 active duty personnel by then and focus more on the high-tech gadgetry that will dominate the battlefields of the future. Arirang's Defense Ministry correspondent Kim In-bin has more.
The number of mandatory active duty soldiers in Korea, currently 633,000 strong, will be smaller by 2022. The Defense Ministry said Thursday it plans to cut 40,000 troops over the next 5 years and 70,000 more between 2019 and 2022, for a total reduction of 110,000. To fill the gap, the number of non-commissioned officers would increase from the current 30% to 43% by 2025. To better prepare for the handoff of wartime operational control, currently scheduled for 2015, the military plans to merge 2 of its 3 Army headquarters and set up a ground operations command. The initial merger date was set for 2030, but that's now been accelerated to 2026. In other plans, the Navy will set up a submarine command to counter the increasing underwater capabilities of the North, while the Marine Corps will establish a Jeju unit, an aviation group to defend Korea's southernmost island. With regard to the North's missile and nuclear threats, the Defense Ministry will also refocus efforts on developing the kill chain and Korea air and missile defense systems, which can detect and counter missiles and nuclear weapons from Pyongyang. The operational target range of high-tech gadgetry, such as satellite-guided missiles and next-generation fighter jets, will also get a boost. Experts say all the changes are being made in consideration of the nation's low birth rate, as the military attempts to transition into a more efficient and cheaper force. The military estimates that it will cost over $201 billion over the next 5 years to implement the plan, which represents an average annual increase of 7.2% of the defense budget. Kim In-bin, ARIRANG News.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, join Yoshihide for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on ARIRANG TV.
The website of a major Korean telecommunications company has been hacked. The personal data of 12 million KT Telecom clients, including their resident registration numbers and bank account numbers, were leaked. The Incheon Metropolitan Police Agency has reportedly arrested 2 professional hackers and the head of a telemarketing company for pocketing $10.8 million using the personal data. The 3 reportedly used more than a half of the stolen personal data to sell smartphones, while the rest of the data was sold off to smartphone retail shops. The Korean government has unveiled a set of measures to ease regulations that hamper corporate mergers and acquisitions. The move aimed at fostering startups is part of the government's 3-year economic innovation plan. ARIRANG News' Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Late last month, Facebook bought the mobile messaging service WhatsApp for a whopping $19 billion. Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, described the 5-year-old upstart company as an incredibly valuable service. The Korean government is now aiming to promote similar mergers and acquisitions that help venture startups promote their products to more people around the world. Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok said Thursday that the government will streamline tax and financial support systems to remove regulations that hinder corporate M&A activities. Hyun said the government expects the M&As to create a virtuous circle where venture startups can grow into global companies.
The government will expand the size of a growth fund for the merger and acquisition activities of venture firms and small and medium-sized companies to around $930 million within the next 3 years.
With the set of measures the government has laid out, a report by the Korea Institute of Finance says the nation's M&A market is expected to nearly double by 2017 to $65 billion from last year. To make that a reality, Hyun urged M&A market participants like companies and investors to make good use of the measures. The finance ministry said the local M&A market has continued to shrink after the global financial crisis in 2007 and 2008, and that its size is smaller compared to other advanced economies. It added that a sluggish M&A market prevents the kind of voluntary business restructuring that allows companies to focus their investments on core areas. The measures to boost mergers and acquisitions are in line with the 3-year economic innovation plan laid out by the Park Geun-hye administration that looks for new growth engines to strengthen the nation's economic fundamentals. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
The rival party lawmakers went head-to-head again this Thursday, this time over revisions to the nation's pension system that the government hopes to implement this year. Our National Assembly correspondent Kim Young-gil has this report.
The ruling Saenuri Party urged lawmakers to pass revisions to the pension system at a meeting of its Supreme Council at a community welfare center on Thursday.
The parliament should act quickly to pass pending welfare bills that directly relate to improving people's livelihoods. We must make sure that there are no holes in the government's welfare programs.
The party wants to link the so-called basic pension program to the National Pension Service. Under the basic pension program, senior citizens in the poorest 70% income bracket would be given a monthly pension of $90 to $190. Seniors who have paid into an NPS account for 11 years or less will receive the most, while those paying more than 11 years would receive less, since they would also get NPS benefits. The main opposition Democratic Party is against linking the two programs.
The government should provide a basic pension to all senior citizens ages 65 and older in the bottom 70% income bracket, regardless of how much they've put into their NPS accounts.
Back at the National Assembly, lawmakers on the Welfare Committee discussed providing pensions to people with disabilities and giving allowances to people living under extreme conditions. Despite months of negotiations to find a middle ground, there have been no signs that the two parties will adjust their positions in order to strike a deal. In any case, the two parties hope to launch the new pension scheme in July. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
And speaking of creating an ecosystem for venture startups, the ministry in charge of science and technology announced some ambitious plans aimed at giving these fledgling companies a leg up as they're getting off the ground. Our Na Young-kyung tells us what they entail.
Only 30% of the nation's startups survive to the age of 5, according to recent Statistics Korea data, which is one of the reasons why the government is trying to turn the tables for young entrepreneurs who are willing to test creative new ideas. The Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning has fleshed out its ambitious plan to launch what's widely known as an accelerator program. The Korean government's version of the program aims to help startups by providing a packaged service. A small group, fewer than 10, of wannabe entrepreneurs with creative and unique ideas will be selected in each round. They will be given 3 to 6 months of mentoring and training prior to opening up their businesses, and then they will have a chance to make pitches aimed at locking down investment. After the business is launched, these up-and-coming firms will be provided with marketing and retail networking services so they can break into the domestic market. Not only that, a selected few promising companies will get additional support in tapping into the global market. A total of 10 billion won, or roughly $9.4 million, will be injected into this program this year. The ministry plans to form a special consultative body for the accelerator program by mid-March and has also called on conglomerates to launch similar programs to fund and nurture the nation's startups. Na Hyun-kyung, ARIRANG News.
A new school year has begun for many Korean students this week, and this includes those taking part in online courses as well. More students are turning to cyber universities to quench their educational thirst in the nation. Yet, our Kwon So-ah reports the institutions face challenges ahead.
The excitement is in the air at Seoul National University's orientation ceremony, where thousands of new students are marking the start of a 4-year journey. It's the same scene at another welcoming event for freshmen at another university. But here at Seoul Cyber University, students do not walk around the campus looking for their classrooms. They jump on the internet to take their classes. Moon So-yoon is a Cyber University sophomore. She graduated from a 2-year college program but became interested in counseling psychology and tried to find a way to balance a job and her studies.
The biggest advantage of taking cyber university classes is that you have no restrictions as to time, location, or age.
So-yoon says sudden pop quizzes and discussions make the courses more interactive.
Many cyber universities do not limit their education to online classes, but give students the opportunity to take part in offline courses and activities at their offline campuses.
Professors say online classes are not only good for students, but for teachers as well.
For professors of offline universities, it's not easy to receive feedback or monitor yourself. And that goes for me too, as I've worked at conventional universities for 10 years. But since my classes are now filmed, I can get concrete feedbacks.
There were only 9 cyber universities in Korea in 2001. Today, there are 21. The number of cyber students is on the rise too, jumping from 6,000 in 2001 to nearly 115,000 in 2013. Experts attribute the jump to the increasing number of students pursuing lifelong education. Much lower tuition prices have also played a role. However, cyber universities still face challenges compared to brick-and-mortar institutions.
I think it's credibility of a cyber university degree is right now is ongoing examination period of time. Some areas is their quality is doubt is in terms of their degree programs and the methodology of teaching and learning and their job skills, etc.
Despite the self-evident figures and the increasing popularity of cyber universities, it will take time for them to develop the respect afforded to conventional schools. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Diplomatic efforts to resolve the crisis in Ukraine failed to make much headway at talks in Paris on Wednesday. The U.S. and Russia were unable to see eye to eye as Moscow refused to recognize the interim Ukrainian government. Connie Kim reports.
International efforts to resolve the crisis in Ukraine took baby steps forward in Paris Wednesday, with the United States and Russia agreeing to continue talks the next day, but no progress was made between Russia and the new Ukrainian government. Speaking after the meeting, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said talks with Russia will continue to try and de-escalate the crisis.
We agreed to continue intense discussions in the coming days with Russia, with the Ukrainians, in order to see how we can help normalize the situation, stabilize it, and overcome the crisis.
Kerry said there were no expectations that the talks would resolve the conflict, but added there are a number of ideas on the table. U.S. officials say Kerry had presented Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov with a plan for restoring Ukraine's sovereignty while addressing Moscow's concerns about its Black Sea Fleet and the many ethnic Russians that live in eastern Ukraine. The two are expected to meet again in Rome on Thursday. Lavrov confirmed that the talks would continue, but discussions between Russia and Ukraine did not materialize, with the Russian foreign minister calling Ukraine's new government illegitimate. In Brussels, NATO announced there will be no talks with Moscow after Russian President Vladimir Putin refused to pull out Russian forces from Ukraine's Crimea Peninsula, where the tense standoff continues between pro-Russian forces and the Ukrainian military. NATO said it'll also back out from a joint mission linked to Syrian chemical weapons and help build the capacity of the Ukrainian military. Meanwhile, the European Union has unveiled a package of aid and grants to Ukraine's new government worth some $15 billion over the next couple of years. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
And turning now to more global news updates. From the Israel's condemnation of Iranian arms shipment to the anniversary of Hugo Chavez's death, we turn to Polly at the News Center. Paul, let's go straight to the Middle East. Israel has issued strong words against Iran. Can you tell us more?
Hi, GA. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has condemned Iran after his government claimed to have seized a ship containing Iranian-supplied rockets to the Gaza Strip. The Israeli military said the rockets were manufactured in Syria and were intended for Palestinian guerrilla fighters.
In the last 24 hours, Israel has intercepted an Iranian arms shipment to the terrorists in Gaza. This ship contains dozens of lethal long-range missiles, high explosives that could rain death and destruction on Israel's civilians and on our cities. I think what this reveals is the true face of Iran.
Netanyahu emphasized that the alleged arms shipment was further proof that Iran could not be trusted, particularly with respect to diplomatic efforts over its nuclear program. There has been no immediate comment out of Tehran. And heading over to Latin America, Venezuela is commemorating the first anniversary of the death of President Hugo Chavez with military parades and honors. Thousands of Venezuelans lined up to pay their respects at Chavez's tomb at the Montana military base overlooking Caracas. Cuba's President Raul Castro also arrived to participate in the ceremonies. In Argentina, President Cristina Fernandez hailed Chavez's efforts to fight poverty and unite leftist countries in the region.
One can see at the Montana barracks that it's very nice. Where is he around the popular barrios? It's his people. The poor are looking after him. Up there, they're looking after the armed forces and everyone else. Hugo Chavez, Nestor Kirchner, and those others who look after the people.
Chavez was a hero to many, especially Venezuela's poorest. However, his successor, President Nicolas Maduro, has been facing an explosion of anti-government protests, which have led to 18 deaths since February. And moving over to India, where the dates for the country's next general election have been announced. India's Election Commission says the polls will be held in 9 phases from April 7th through May 12th. It represents the world's biggest exercises in democracy, involving over 14 million voters, a number larger than the population of Europe. Leaders across the Indian political spectrum are preparing to officially launch their campaigns, with early opinion polls showing Hindu nationalist leader Narendra Modi as a clear frontrunner. That's all from me for now, but I'll be out with more updates in just about 2 hours.
And let's get a check on the weather with our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Now, Bo-kyung, today was another chilly day here in Seoul. How are other regions looking?
Even colder, Ji-hye. A cold wave warning has been issued in Gangwon-do province, and temperatures there tomorrow will drop about 2 degrees compared to today. And currently, the southern regions are seeing cloudy skies, but that will clear up by later tonight. For those of you who didn't know, today is Gyeongchip. This is one of the 24 indicators, and today is the day that frogs awake from their winter sleeps due to the warm weather. However, it looks like they will have to wait until the weekend because a cold snap is set to continue through tomorrow. Other than that, dry weather warning has been issued in most parts of the country except Gangwon-do and Jeju, so make sure to keep yourselves hydrated. Taking a look at Friday's readings, well, Seoul reaches 5 degrees and cities down south make it to 8. As for other regions, Daejeon and Jeju peak at 8 and 7 degrees, while Dokdo tops out at 2. Well, that's all the weather update for now, but I'll be back with more after 10.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. I'm Yoshihide in Seoul. I'll be back with more news updates on our primetime news at 10 p.m. Korea time. See you then.